Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing. I'm Esther McVeigh, standing in for Gloria. Now, more blue on blue attacks. Last night's televised debate between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss was surprising only for the levels of acrimony. We'll speak to the former Tory party chairman, Amanda Milling, about the damage it's doing to the party. Has levelling up gone up in smoke? Jake Berry, the chairman of the Northern Research Group, will join me after reports suggest public spending in the north has slipped behind the rest of England. And Boris Johnson has reportedly told senior allies he doesn't want to resign and wants to fight the next election as Tory leader, according to The Telegraph. We'll speak to the man who broke the story, Chris Hope. As always, we're keen to hear from you, so do email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 12. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Now, the two candidates to become the UK's next Prime Minister will face off again tonight following a heated first head-to-head debate. The two candidates traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. The former Chancellor, though, claimed there was nothing conservative about Ms Truss's approach.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids. We're going to have to pick up the tab for that.
The Shadow Financial Secretary, James Murray, told us the debate shows how the two candidates have no concrete solutions to the cost of living crisis.
What I found quite astonishing is it was basically an hour of two people who want to be leader of the Conservative Party totally trashing the last 12 years of the Conservatives in government, really pointing out all of the huge failings with what the Conservatives have done over the last 12 years, and then offering no real solutions to what to do next.
Archie Battersby's parents are vowing to continue their son's life support despite a legal ruling that treatment can stop. Yesterday, appeal court judges ruled that doctors at the Royal London Hospital could lawfully stop providing life-saving care. The 12-year-old has not regained consciousness since suffering an accident at home in April. There's now just over 24 hours before Archie can legally be taken off life support. Archie's mother, Holly, told GB News she'll appeal.
I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face. Again, I'm just going to give it all I can until I can't go no more.
The government doesn't know whether the coronavirus traffic light travel system that was enforced on those arriving into the UK actually worked. Well, that's the conclusion of the Public Accounts Committee, who say nearly £500 million was spent on the quarantine scheme that caused huge confusion with 10 rule changes in a year. Arrivals from red list countries had to stay in a quarantine hotel for at least 10 days. Only 2% of those guests ever tested positive for COVID. Public concern over inflation has reached its highest level in 40 years. A poll by Ipsos found that 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today, as prices continue to rise. In particular, those aged between 18 and 34 were most concerned. MPs have accused the energy regulator Ofgem of being negligent. It's the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy that says government needs to change its out-of-date energy bill support for households. The Select Committee added that a massive insulation drive needs to be launched urgently, as it would permanently bring down bills. Energy expert Will Hodgson told us there are things we can all do to cut our costs.
Britain has got the oldest housing stock in Europe, right? And we can take pride, I think, in having built houses that were made to last. But those houses are drafty. They leak energy. And if you can plug those leaks, you're going to save up to £600 from your bill. So the message of yesteryear was switch energy supplier to get the best price. I think the message going forward is look for energy efficiency so as to reduce your energy usage.
Communities suffering from repeated flooding could benefit from a new £100 million funding package that's designed to help protect their properties. The money is going to be available for areas where 10 or more homes have flooded at least twice in the last 10 years. It's also for places where community-wide flood defences are not always viable. Increased drinking fuelled by the pandemic could lead to thousands of extra deaths over the next 20 years. A study by the University of Sheffield found that people who were drinking at risky levels before the pandemic then increased their alcohol consumption when COVID hit. The research scenario also shows that over the next 20 years, there'll be over 124,000 additional hospital admissions in men and 83,000 in women. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Esther for this morning's briefing.
So the dust is still settling after last night's TV debate, with Snap poll showing pretty much a score draw as to who won, and both sides taking hope from those polls. One shows Sunak ahead on who would make the best PM and who is most competent, but Truss, crucially, is still ahead with Conservative voters. Well, our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, you're here. I'm liking to see that we match today. We've got matching blue suits on, so we've got our own kind of blue on blue going on today.
Hopefully not quite as vicious as what we saw last night, Esther.
And I was going to ask about that. What about last night? What about the performance last night? What will people be thinking about last night?
Well, it got a bit tetchy, didn't it, at points? Really, the candidates going after one another. I think a lot of people will be thinking that one of the big winners of last night was actually Sir Keir Starmer, rather than either of the two contenders there. Really going after one another on not just personality and, for example, how they dress, but also on policy. Liz Truss again saying that Rishi Sunak's tax rises would precipitate a recession next year. Rishi Sunak saying that Liz Truss's tax cuts would raise interest rates as high as 7%, and that would be a terrible thing for people with mortgages. So really going for each other on their economic programmes. But it's interesting, looking at some of that snap polling that you were whizzing through in that introduction, there's also one big takeaway from it, which is that people watching thought that the candidates were too negative. 52% of those watching thought that the candidates didn't have enough to say about their own plans and were simply attacking the other side too much. Just 38% of those watching thought that the candidates were broadly positive about their own agendas.
Well, hopefully they've read that, because there's another debate tonight. You're going to be there. I totally agree with you. I like to know what people stand for rather than what they're not. So do you think they might take heed? What do you expect to happen tonight?
Well, yes, I think it might be a little bit more like that. I think that particularly Rishi Sunak was seen to be a bit too aggressive last night, interrupting Liz Truss quite a lot. It's understandable why he'd want to do that, given that he's a bit behind in the polls amongst the Tory members. He needs a chance to break through. He needs that moment. So he was a bit agitated in that, presentationally. Perhaps he'll calm down a bit tonight. But also, the debate's being hosted by the Sun newspaper. The questions are being put forward by Sun readers. And potentially, this will be a bit more on policy, and therefore it might give the candidates an opportunity to put forward what they stand for in a bit more of a positive way, rather than just contrasting themselves against their opponents, as we've seen more recently. But also, in what you were explaining there about that snap polling by the opinion pollsters last night, it's really interesting to see the difference between what Conservative voters, and these are people who aren't current Conservative voters but voted Conservative in 2019, that's what the audience was made up as well. The people who voted Conservative in 2019, by 47% thought that Truss won and 38% thought that Rishi Sunak won. So to some extent, Liz Truss can take that as a bit of a win in terms of saying who can connect with those people who won that big majority last time round. No doubt those numbers will be being trumpeted by the Truss campaign in the coming days.
I think it's interesting that how are they going to connect? Now, I personally think we need to see their team. I don't believe one person at the moment can connect to the blue wall seats, the red wall seats, what's going on, whether it's the cost of living, whether it's the environment, whether it's the energy policies. So I'd like to see the team. Do you think they will be pressed on that? Who's going to be the Chancellor? Who's going to be the Home Secretary?
So a number of journalists have tried doggedly to ask these candidates that very question so far, and neither of them are saying that they will set out their cabinet before they become Prime Minister. It's interesting because, of course, when you stood alongside Jeremy Hunt in the early weeks of this contest, you were very clear that Jeremy Hunt would be the sort of person representing the blue wall, you'd be representing the red wall. That was an attractive prospect for many people, but I don't think we're seeing quite that same level of duality in these campaigns. However, there has been speculation as to who may be in the cabinets, and we can see those leading voices popping up on television programmes, being the outriders, perhaps being the spokespeople for these campaigns. Perhaps they will be the people closest to those who they're speaking for.
But why the team is so important, whereas people say, well, we don't necessarily know what they stand for. As soon as you see that team, who's going to be the Chancellor, who's going to be Home Secretary, all of a sudden you know which way the ship is going. You also can see, is that somebody with experience? This now is about delivery. It's about competence. It's knowing where you're going. It's a cost of living crisis. So I think these are the questions, and you are the person, Tom, as always, to put these forward if you can. Who is their team?
Yes, it's interesting. Looking at Liz Truss, for example, you've had Therese Coffey, the current Work and Pensions Secretary, going out on the rounds, one of the early backers of Liz Truss. Also Jacob Rees-Mogg, an early backer, but also Kwasi Kwarteng, someone who a lot of people think might well be Liz Truss's Chancellor, although nothing confirmed, of course. And then we move over to Rishi Sunak. One of his early backers, of course, Steve Barclay, now the Health Secretary, touted as potentially one of Rishi Sunak's choices for Chancellor. Also a backer of Rishi Sunak, Dominic Raab, of course. Might he continue in the Deputy Prime Minister role? That would be a bit of continuity.
Tom, as always, thank you very much indeed. You've set yourself some questions. You've now got to find the answers. I'll be back with you, hopefully, next week. But after the last fractious televised leadership debate, Rishi Sunak reported reportedly turned to Liz Truss and asked, why are we doing this? There have been concerns within the party that the blue-on-blue warfare is only helping Labour, as Tom's just said, with clips from hustings being turned into attack ads against the Conservatives. Now some senior figures have called for an end to negative campaigning by the two camps. But has that argument been heeded? Have a look at this clip from last night's BBC debate and we'll let you make your own mind up.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren. Everyone here has kids.
That
we're
is
going to
not
have
true.
to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing conservative about doing that.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. I don't believe this negative, declinist language
It's your own
that we're
economic
hearing.
advisor, Liz. It's not mine. It's your own advisor.
I have lots of economists that are backing my plans. Everybody thinks that putting up taxes at this moment is going to hurt the economy.
Do you know what mortgage rates are in the US at the moment? Do you want to use them as an example? Their mortgage rates are almost 50% higher than mortgage rates in this country because they're borrowing so much.
I'm sorry, this is scaremongering.
Canada actually
this is Project Fear.
Liz, I remember the referendum campaign. I remember the referendum campaign, and there were only one of us who was on the side of Remain and Project Fear, and it was you, not me.
Okay.
And you talk
maybe
about
I've
this.
learnt from that.
What we do need to do is acknowledge that China is a threat to our national security. It's a threat to our economic security. And that's why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that we could put forward something called the National Security and Investment Bill. We also need to stand up for our values. And for example, when it came to Hong Kong, I was pleased to ensure that we put the funding in place to welcome to this country thousands of Rishi, who wanted to leave.
Rishi, I challenged you on this in the debate last week. As recently as a month ago, you were pushing for closer trade relationships with China. This is not something you've advocated in government. I'm delighted that you've come round to my way of thinking.
Let's speak to the Conservative MP, Amanda Milling, a former chairman of the party, who has called for candidates to keep their campaigns positive. So, Amanda, this is what you want, not blue on blue. How do you think the debates have gone so far, then?
So, Esther, I'm thrilled to be with you this afternoon. And I've been really concerned over the last couple of weeks about the nature of the debate, the kind of the tone of the debate. And that's why in the weekend I called for both teams to sign up to a clean campaign charter to keep it clean, fair and focused on policy. You know, we had the debate last night. It was good to have a policy debate, but we do really need both the contenders and also their teams to really watch the tone and take out the mudslinging, take out the personal attacks. Let's have a good policy debate and focus on what we're going to do, what they will do to deliver for the British people, and how that they will win the next general election.
And Amanda, since 2015, since you've been an MP and chairman of the party and a whip, you've seen 3 leadership elections. How does this one fare to the other 2?
As you say, this is a lot of leadership elections in a fairly short period of time. That this one does feel particularly toxic. It does feel there's an awful lot of personal attacks, which is why I'm calling on both of the contenders for the leadership and also their teams to dial it down, to focus on what they're going to deliver. That we want to hear them set out the stall. It's good and right to have a policy debate, but it needs to be done in a way that is respectful and dignified.
And whilst at the end of the debate they were pleasant to one another, what you did see, though, is there are teams setting out attacks online. So a spokesman for Liz saying Rishi is not fit to hold office, and then sort of, adding to that he was simply mansplaining shouty private school behaviour, desperate, unbecoming and a gift to Labour. That's not right either, surely.
And this is what the clean campaign charter is focusing on. It's not just Liz and Rishi. It's also about the wider teams ensuring that, on the background briefings, that we have this kind of dignified, respectful debate. We stop these personal attacks. We want to hear their policy. We want them to hear them set out their stall on policy, but it needs to be done in a respectful way. And ultimately, what members and the general public want to see is, what will they deliver as leader of the party, but also as Prime Minister. Let's hear that policy debate, but let's hear it in a way where it's respectful and dignified. Because ultimately, when we come to the beginning of September, when one or other is elected as leader of the party and therefore Prime Minister, they're going to have to reunite the party. And this division doesn't make that job any easier. What we want to, we know that divided parties don't win elections. So what we want to hear is, what are they going to deliver for the British people? And how are they going to take on Sir Keir's Labour Party? How are they going to take on the yellow peril of the Lib Dems? And also keep the United Kingdom united? How are they going to take the fight to the SNP north of the border?
And how do you think you could go about bringing the party together come September? It is an important year of delivery. Things have got to be done. You've got the cost of living that's got to be dealt with. I'm saying I'd like to know who their teams are in advance, because in a way that could show they can reach out to the north, to the south, to Remainers, to Leavers, to people who are for lockdown, for people who are anti-lockdown, and how do we move forward not having lockdowns again? So how do you think they could now begin to start healing those divides?
So I think this comes back to my calls for a more respectful debate and for them to sign up to a clean campaign charter, because, pulling the team together in September is much more difficult if we have a divisive campaign now. We've got 6 weeks. We've got various hustings on the media. We've got the hustings being held by the party. Let's have this debate, but let's have a dignified and respectful one, because that's the way we'll be able to reunite, pull together at such a critical time to deliver for the British people at a time which is really difficult economically.
And Nadine's comments about Claire accessories, earrings and sort of expensive suits, that was a low blow, was it not? I mean, who cares? Surely, I'd love to have an expensive suit, don't care about earrings. So really, for Tories to be talking about that?
So I'm not going to get drawn into what kind of individuals have all said, but this goes back to my point. It's not just about Liz and Rishi and the way that they behave in the debates themselves, but it's about the wider teams. Let's not have these personal attacks, whether on the media or on Twitter either. Let's have a really good policy debate.
Amanda Milling, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thank you this afternoon. Now that Boris Johnson is standing down, are his flagship plans to level up the UK in peril? New figures reveal spending per head in the north has been falling relative to the other regions. I'll talk to Jake Berry, chairman of the Northern Research Group, next about what needs to happen. Back in just a moment.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A rather cloudy day for many of us, with scattered showers. Not for all, however. There will be some places that stay dry, and there will be increasing sunny spells later in the day. A ridge of high pressure is building in. Still the influence of low pressure towards Scandinavia, however, and coolish north to northwesterly airflow across the country. So a lot of cloud cover. Sunshine in short supply and scattered showers developing, most notably Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, into northern and central parts of England. There will be increasingly sunny spells developing later, especially for Wales and the southwest, and feeling pleasant enough with lighter winds compared with Monday. Temperatures reaching the low 20s in the south and high teens in the north. Into the evening, the cloud increasingly disappears. A few fog patches will form actually over, say, higher parts of Wales and northern England. Otherwise, showers largely disappearing away from the north of Scotland, and a cool night to come, even in urban areas, temperatures dipping into the single figures, and in the countryside, I think, mid-single figures are possible. So a fresh start to Wednesday. A sunnier start, I think, compared with Tuesday, but the cloud will build, and again we'll see a few showers developing, especially towards parts of Wales, the Midlands into northern England, and those showers continuing across parts of northern Scotland as well. A lot of cloud by the end of the afternoon then, and temperatures reaching the low to possibly the mid-20s in the south, and again the high 20s, or the high teens I should say, and around 20 Celsius across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Into the evening, and the cloud cover continues to thicken across central areas with a few more showers. But the weather remains fairly changeable with further showers to come on Friday and Saturday. It turns hotter in the southeast.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 12:24. Now, the promise to level up the whole country was one reason why Boris Johnson swept into power with an 80-seat majority in 2019. Not that he's going. Now that he's going, the new leader, will they focus on this? Will they still focus on that levelling up agenda? It was discussed in last night's debate, of course, but new figures out today by the think tank, the IPPR, reveal that funding per person in the north has fallen relative to other regions, London in particular. So is levelling up just a slogan? Joining me now is Jake Berry, chair of the Northern Research Group and former minister for the Northern Powerhouse. So, Jake, you couldn't have lobbied any harder for the North here. So what's happened?
So, Esther, thanks for having me on your show. Look, those figures are really concerning, but it links to something we in the Northern Research Group and as Northern MPs I've got all of these leadership candidates to do, is to sign a pledge to say we're going to equalise funding around the UK. Just to put it in context for you, Esther, if we'd have spent the same on transport in the north of England as they spent in London over the last 10 years, we would have spent an extra £66 billion on putting transport infrastructure in. Now, you know and I know that's desperately needed across the north of England, and this pledge to level funding across the whole of the country will hopefully see these figures reversed.
Now, I was looking at these figures and it said public spending was higher in real terms in 2019 than in the sort of England average, but by 2021 it had fallen behind. But if you dig into those figures, that was a bad time for lockdowns in the north, who suffered considerably during that time, and it was in lockdown for longer. So, you know, are these figures really revealing what's going on and the sort of expenditure in the north?
Well, I've been looking at the figures over the last decade, Esther, and you know from our time together in government, it's a constant battle with the Treasury to try and get them to spend more money in the north of England. We have a sort of, a system where the cards are stacked against the north of England. They're stacked against less developed areas like Cornwall and the East Midlands. And it's a huge battle. And what the pledge with the Northern Research Group has got these candidates to sign up to is a formulaic guarantee that we'll spend the same in the north. spent in London. And you don't just look back over lockdown, you're absolutely right that that has been a very difficult period. If you look back over 10, 15, 20 years, this is a trend that we need to reverse.
And I'm going to sort of level a little bit of criticism now at the Northern MPs. And I'm wondering, did they show huge naivety? So instead of just focusing on what they needed for transport across the north, instead they were lobbying for HS2 and therefore lost, as I would see it, money for the north. So was there an element of naivety with Northern MPs?
Well, I mean, look, I think Northern MPs have been clear, and I'm always really clear that I don't work for the government. I work for the people of Rosendale and Darwin who send me there. I know my colleagues feel the same. We have this levelling up fund, which many MPs have bid into. That, first and foremost, is what priorities you create for your constituency and where you live. There are always these big ticket items like HS2, like other big infrastructure pieces that the government's putting in, and that does often skew spending. But what I want to see is not just on transport, which is a very narrow view, across all public spending, whether that be the amount of money you spend on the NHS or your local hospitals. I want to see that levelled across our country, which is why we've got the candidates to sign up to this pledge. It's not going to be easy. We're trying to reverse 40 years at least where the north-south divide has grown, where there's been more spending in London than there has in the south of England. It's not an easy task, but I do think Northern MPs coming together, campaigning together, and in fact, just today, you've seen the Northern newspapers coming together with a unified front page, shows that the North won't forget, as the headline says. The North won't forget the fact that we back this government, and we expect this government to back us, Esther.
Absolutely. And for me, you need to connect all of the major towns across the north. That is one massive, big engine of future prosperity, and it needs to be linked up sooner rather than later. So my question to you is, how big is this issue going to be for the new leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister?
Well, I hope whoever he or she may be, they're going to put it front and centre. They've all committed to have a Minister for North in the Cabinet with the levers of growth at their fingertips. They've all committed to equalise spending. And interestingly, because I know it's something that you and I have been focused on for many years, they've all committed to have a big pivot towards vocational education. I think that's the government starting to take our Northern agenda seriously. I and Northern MPs will be holding their feet to the flame, because it's this simple, Esther. If we don't win the North, the face of the new Conservative Party means that we don't win the general election. And I do not want to see Sir Keir Starmer and his cronies, going back on all the hard work we've put into the north of England over the last decade.
Do either of the two candidates, do they get the North?
Well, I think, in Rishi Sunak, you've got a Northern MP, and in Liz Truss, you've got someone who is educated in Leeds. So I think they both have strong connections to the North. But Esther, let's be clear. There are 80 Northern MPs. That's the size of the government majority. If you don't look after the North and look after your Northern MPs, they ain't going to vote for you. The idea that these red wall seats have suddenly become safe Conservative seats is complete and utter nonsense. There are areas that back the Conservative Party on a promise to level up, and we have to deliver against that promise if we expect them to vote Conservative again.
And devolution, has that helped at all? There we've got Labour mayors up north. Is it more just a ding-dong, an extra layer of politics? They've done moaning rather than actually driving things through. I don't see that it's helped the North.
Well, look, you probably have a different view from me. I think devolution is a good thing for the North because it's taking decision-making powers and put it back in the north of England. We've got a brilliant mayor in Ben Houchin, a Conservative mayor in the Tees Valley, who has transformed that region. There are other mayors like Andy Burnham, but devolution isn't bad necessarily for the government's agenda, because of course we now have more Conservative MPs in Greater Manchester following devolution than we had before we had a mayor of
Probably said it wasn't going too well. They could say it wasn't going too well with the mayor, and it actually brought through a surge of opposition MPs. But
well,
look, Jake Berry, Brilliant, as always, to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we'll be in Northern Ireland next, mulling over the legacy of Lord David Trimble and the part he played in bringing peace to Northern Ireland with DUP MP Ian Paisley. And will Boris Johnson be back? The Telegraph's Chris Hope hears he doesn't want to resign and still wants to be Prime Minister, and has been telling friends he'll be back in a couple of years. Chris Hope joins us live. But first, it's your news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 12:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The two candidates to become the UK's next Prime Minister will face off again tonight following a heated first head-to-head debate. The pair traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Miss Truss's approach.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
That's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids. We're going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Public concern over inflation has reached its highest level in 40 years. A poll by Ipsos found that 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today. In particular, those aged 18 to 34 were most concerned. MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving into the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels tested positive. The committee also says the government's approach to border controls and quarantine caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in 1 year. Network Rail is advising people not to travel by rail tomorrow unless absolutely necessary, due to another day of strikes. More than 40,000 members of the RMT union and 14 train operators will walk out in a continuing dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Network Rail says only 20% of services will run, and some places will have no trains at all. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Shortly, we'll be back to The Briefing.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.99 and 1.182 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,432 and 96 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A rather cloudy day for many of us, with scattered showers. Not for all, however. There will be some places that stay dry, and there will be increasing sunny spells later in the day. A ridge of high pressure is building in. Still the influence of low pressure towards Scandinavia, however, and coolish north to northwesterly airflow across the country. So a lot of cloud cover. Sunshine in short supply and scattered showers developing, most notably Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, into northern and central parts of England. There will be increasingly sunny spells developing later, especially for Wales and the southwest, and feeling pleasant enough with lighter winds compared with Monday. Temperatures reaching the low 20s in the south and high teens in the north. Into the evening, the cloud increasingly disappears. A few fog patches will form actually over, say, higher parts of Wales and northern England. Otherwise, showers largely disappearing away from the north of Scotland, and a cool night to come. Even in urban areas, temperatures dipping into the single figures, and in the countryside, I think, mid-single figures are possible. So a fresh start to Wednesday. A sunnier start, I think, compared with Tuesday, but the cloud will build, and again we'll see a few showers developing, especially towards parts of Wales, the Midlands into northern England, and those showers continuing across parts of northern Scotland as well. A lot of cloud by the end of the afternoon then, and temperatures reaching the low to possibly the mid-20s in the south, and again the high 20s, or the high teens I should say, and around 20 Celsius across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Into the evening and the cloud cover continues to thicken across central areas with a few more showers, but the weather remains fairly changeable with further showers to come on Friday and Saturday. It turns hotter in the southeast.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's rapidly approaching 12:40. Now, we believe we may have found the UK's cheapest shop where everything they sell is 20p. I can see a mass stampede now by GB viewers and myself. It's run by Stuart Nelson and his dad Steve, who opened it 5 years ago. But with the cost of living squeeze, more and more people are turning to them to make ends meet. Our reporter Paul Hawkins went along to the 20p shop in Otley in Yorkshire to speak to Stuart and have a rummage through the bargains.
It's like a little car boot sale on the inside, but you don't have to bid for things. Everything's just 20 pence each. We've got massive amounts of stuff. It changes every day as well.
For kids of a certain age, this is a DVD. Surely no one is going to buy one of these.
People still buy them today.
This is a blank one that someone's made themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. There might be one in here where they've taped the radio. Right? Do you remember we used to do that?
Thank you.
And what sort of people come into shop?
We have everyone. Any different walks of life. Millionaires, people in paid to paycheck, students coming out of Leeds. Absolutely everyone.
£2 for the videos as well. Yeah, you've got 10 items, yes, so £2. Oh, is it 10 items? Yeah, everything's 20p, in 20p.
We've seen a big influx because of the cost of living going through the roof, that more people are coming to the shop. It helps people out at 20 pence a piece. They can go and get any essential items they need, any bits and pieces. You know, we've got a children's bike we sold this Monday, just gone, and 20 pence a piece. It's going to go to a little girl, and they're going to enjoy it.
Are you money laundering again?
Yeah. It's a wonderful little shop. You can find all sorts of little, treasures.
Do you like this shop?
Yeah. I like looking at the books. I'm a book reader. I'm not Kindle.
What's the best thing about it? The price. How do you make money when everything is 20p? Where the hell is the profit margin?
The profit margin is in the shop. We buy everything a lot in wholesale. We buy massive amount of things to get in, 100,000 items at a time. We'll do job lots. We'll buy wherever we can if the margin's right.
And then over here got records, vinyl, and there are some bargains that you could find here, right? Maybe stuff that's worth more than 20p.
Yeah. We had someone purchase a gold ring that was £120, right? Retailed £120 or more, bought it for 20 pence because we had it with all costume jewellery. Like I say, anything that comes in goes out.
Did you know it was 120 people when you put it out there?
We didn't know.
Have you got Eamon Holmes' autobiography here? This Is My Life?
Probably somewhere.
It might be in here somewhere. People are still using these then?
Yeah.
You don't need Google Maps or Waze.
25 inches. It's all right, love. No hurry. It's not 25, it's 20. Can you take it out? Yeah.
Do you think if things keep going as they are, you might have to go become the 30p shop?
No, we're always the 20p shop. We'd love to have more space. You know, come 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'd love to have, you know, a few little shops everywhere, so we're helping out a lot more people.
Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Now, tributes have been pouring in for Lord David Trimble, who died yesterday, aged 77, after a short illness. The former First Minister of Northern Ireland was the unionist who brought his party to the negotiating table at Stormont and was key to the Good Friday Agreement, which led to peace after decades of violence. Let's talk now to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie. Doogie, what's the mood where you are today? If we just go back and start this interview again, because it looks like I haven't got the audio to you, Doogie. You look great there. I can see where you are, but we couldn't hear you. It now looks like we can. So, Doogie, over to you.
Yes, welcome to Stormont, and it's here today that we were meant to be reporting on how some of the parties were going to try and elect a speaker. Now that hasn't happened since May. The elections here, of course, have got no unionist support whatsoever for the protocol. And David Trimble, who was one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement, and of course Tony Blair, have both said that the protocol cannot exist at the same time as the Good Friday Agreement. So as much as people are feeling, I suppose, quite sad about the death of Lord Trimble, his legacy of 25 years of peace, himself and John Hume, Gerry Adams and Albert Reynolds put this together quite a long while ago, but it never ever got over its stumbling blocks. David Trimble was an unexpected leader of the largest unionist party. He sat in 1995 against John Taylor, or Lord Kilclooney as he's now known, and Kilclooney's vote split, and David Trimble took the leadership of the Ulster Unionist Party. He went to the negotiating table and he was the unionist leader with the most to give, but he was also the one with the most to lose. And although he did get a peace for 25 years, his first 4 years as the First Minister were very volatile. Arguments over IRA decommissioning and legacy issues haunted that particular government. It collapsed, well, it went to the polls, but in 2005 he lost his Westminster seat to David Simpson, and that was because David, although he was a lawyer and he was very good at the constitutional issues, he refused to deal with the right wing of his own party. Maybe a slight warning in there for the Conservative Party. And those right wingers then left the Ulster Unionist Party, where they thought there was no home for them, and teamed up with the DUP, the Reverend Ian Paisley's party. And of course, they took the majority in the next elections, which then brought in another vote where nationalists then voted for Sinn Féin, and that did away with the moderate SDLP. So the two people, both John Hume, who was the leader of the SDLP, and David Trimble, who was the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, both won the Nobel Peace Prize. But the price for that was at the cost of both their parties. The SDLP now today have about 8 MLAs that sit behind us, and the Ulster Unionist Party, I believe, are somewhere in and around 8 or 9 also. So you were talking about two massive parties inside Ireland. And in fact, the Ulster Unionist Party was inside Britain. It was the third largest party in Westminster. It had people in its ranks like Enoch Powell. It was no low hitter. And to see it now where it is was a result of the Good Friday Agreement. And now we don't know, will that agreement withstand what is happening inside the protocol? So it is a bittersweet day for the Trimble.
Now, I have to say, having worked with... Oh, we're going back and forth in volume. We've got you again there, Doogie. But I have to say, I've worked with Lord Trimble, and I have to say, clear-minded, clear-sighted. He showed he was a selfless politician where he put what he thought was right ahead of himself, and also a keen Brexiteer. So it is right that they should now really focus as another lasting legacy of him to get that protocol sorted.
Well, they are trying to do that, but there's many that will stop it. And of course, that's because there's a trade deal overriding an international peace deal. And many have said that they like the trade deal that is in place. And when you have part of your population that want to go one direction but don't understand that it has repercussions for the other side, it is very, very hard to bring them with you. And what we now have is a complete split in Northern Ireland, back into the lines that we had 25 years ago, where there is financial and constitutional issues and raising their head once again inside Ireland. And the border is playing out in that. And if we look at the Republic of Ireland in this, if there is a trade war, the Republic of Ireland will suffer the most from that between Britain and the EU. So all these things are now into the mix. And if David Trimble was here, I have no doubt that he would try to get the best of a deal. But if he had only held on for maybe 14 days or 15 days more, instead of going for the optics of the Good Friday Agreement, things round weapons, prisoners, legacy may well have been sorted, and those right-wingers may not have left his party, and you could still see at that point that the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists may still well be in power behind us, and the protocol might not have been in the same position that it is now.
Lots of maybes there, and I guess you can't rewrite history, but how about the Northern Ireland Assembly? We want to look to the future. Are they getting back there? Is it up and running again? Some of the promises they've said were waiting with bated breath. Are they getting together?
No, that's not going to happen until this legislation that cleared the House of Commons on the protocol returns from the House of Lords. The DUP will not go back into government until they see what amendments is coming back from the Lords. If it fails in the Lords, no unionists will go back into power here, because the protocol does away with Article 6, the Acts of the Union. It also leaves Northern Ireland in a place where it is answerable to the European Courts of Justice and to the rules in and around certain things such as farming. So as long as that stays in place, the unionists will very much see Northern Ireland as a colony to Europe, and they will have no interest in coming back to govern here.
Doogie, as always, finger on the pulse, what's happening in Northern Ireland. We'll be back to you, I'm sure, as soon as. But let's return to last night's debate between the two Conservative candidates. Our political editor was there and has been speaking to members of the audience who were watching.
Quite interesting, quite heated at the start. Obviously, they both seem to have quite a lot of long-term plans in place, which was quite interesting to hear. I didn't really hear much about short-term, which is what I was interested in, to be honest. But no, as an overall, it was quite interesting.
Did anyone change your mind? Who were you thinking of beforehand?
Oh no, I was undecided before, still undecided now, if I'm being truthful. I actually said it to somebody else earlier. I actually, out of the two of them, I did lean towards Rishi Sunak's plan moving forward, like financially and economically. I think it seemed like maybe a more logical approach to how we should do things. His arguments of borrowing and leaving the tab for other generations seemed to kind of suit a bit better with the conversation, to be honest.
It was lively, it was more entertaining than I thought it would be, and it was very informative, and I thought they got the points over, even though they shouted over each other, and some of the points about the costly issues or your earrings was totally irrelevant and shouldn't have been brought up in that debate in that way.
Who do you think won, though?
Rishi. I said before, if it was a football match, I think it would have been a 2-1 result.
So I went in kind of supporting Rishi because obviously I think he was a lot more prominent within the Boris Johnson era. But I think Liz did a lot better than I expected it to be tonight. I understood their policies a lot more. I think I understood the differences between the two of them a lot more than I did before I came.
Conservative MPs forced Boris Johnson to resign, but many Tory grassroots members are unhappy over that. And 10,000 supporters are backing Bring Back Boris, a campaign there, and they want him to have a vote on him and that decision. Well, the Telegraph's Chris Hope has broken many stories on this, and today reports that Boris Johnson has told friends he doesn't want to go and would stay on if he could. And he joins me now. So, Chris Hope, really? Does Boris Johnson really want to be Prime Minister, and how's that possible?
Well, it's complex, isn't it, Esther? Because as you know, as an MP here in Parliament, where I work, MPs have decided that Boris Johnson shouldn't be the leader anymore, and they've told that to the membership. The problem is the membership voted 2-1 in 2019 to keep Boris Johnson as their leader, to make him their leader over Jeremy Hunt. And there's a feeling amongst a minority of Tory members that they want their say. So this campaign that is being run by Peter Cruddas, Lord Cruddas of Shoreditch, is for a vote to confirm the decision which MPs like yourself made in the House of Commons that Boris Johnson should no longer be party leader. And the lack of this vote is what's driving these names onto this petition.
But does Boris Johnson truly believe he will be back, like his hero Churchill? Does he think he'll be back leading the Conservative Party sometime soon?
Sometime, maybe not soon. There's no question that if this petition fails, and it probably will fail, that sometime in the future Boris Johnson does want to come back. That's pretty clear from everything he's been saying. He feels he's got a duty to the 14 million people who voted Conservative, many for the first time in the Red Wall seats. These are his people. He feels a personal attachment to them, a personal mandate to deliver for them. And that's really what's going on here, that he, whether this works or not, if it gets to where it's around 12,000 members, according to the organisers, have signed this petition. If that continues, then it may be that it gets to 15,000 by the time it finishes, and Johnson can hang on to that almost like a hot water bottle that will warm him in the cold months after he leaves number 10, showing him that actually, despite Twitter, despite all the critics, some people do want him to be back in politics.
Yeah, and this put Boris back on the ballot. I mean, what do you think about that? A political correspondent like yourself knows the ins and outs and work in Parliament. I mean, what do you think about this? Just a bit of theatre or any reality in it whatsoever?
It's a bit of theatre, but the hope is from the campaigners that if enough people sign it, it could force the party to take some action, do a confirmatory vote in whether Boris Johnson should stand down as leader. I think it's unlikely, but that was the idea behind it when they set it up. It wasn't to have a third name on the ballot, i.e. you choose between Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. It was merely a confirmatory vote into whether Boris Johnson should be allowed to carry on or not. Of course, had this poll being granted, and if members had voted to keep Johnson, it would have caused chaos in Westminster because MPs have decided that he can't be their leader. And quite where the party went from then, who knows? So it's probably for the best if it falls away, as it might well do now.
But he is charismatic. There's always something happening with Boris. He's certainly got energy, and to the end, he's got intrigue as well. Chris Hope, I don't know if you can say this, and very quickly in a one-word answer. People are talking about this contest, this leadership one. Is it more bitter? Is it more personal than any others you've ever seen? Just a very quick answer.
Yes.
OK, that's quick. Fantastic. I'll now be on time. Chris Hope, thank you very much indeed. So you've been watching and listening to The Briefing with me, Esther McVeigh. Gloria will be back tomorrow. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. But for now, I'll leave you with the weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A rather cloudy day for many of us with scattered showers. Not for all, however. There will be some places that stay dry and there will be increasing sunny spells later in the day. A ridge of high pressure is building in. Still the influence of low pressure towards Scandinavia, however, and coolish north to northwesterly airflow across the country. So a lot of cloud cover. sunshine in short supply and scattered showers developing, most notably Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, into northern and central parts of England. There will be increasingly sunny spells developing later, especially for Wales and the southwest, and feeling pleasant enough with lighter winds compared with Monday. Temperatures reaching the low 20s in the south and high teens in the north. Into the evening, the cloud increasingly disappears. A few fog patches will form actually over, say, higher parts of Wales and northern England. Otherwise, showers largely disappearing away from the north of Scotland, and a cool night to come. Even in urban areas, temperatures dipping into the single figures, and in the countryside, I think, mid-single figures are possible. So a fresh start to Wednesday. A sunnier start, I think, compared with Tuesday, but the cloud will build, and again we'll see a few showers developing, especially towards parts of Wales, the Midlands into northern England, and those showers continuing across parts of northern Scotland as well. A lot of cloud by the end of the afternoon then, and temperatures reaching the low to possibly the mid-20s in the south, and again the high 20s, or the high teens I should say, and around 20 Celsius across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Into the evening, and the cloud cover continues to thicken across central areas with a few more showers, but the weather remains fairly changeable with further showers to come